30,000 Mongol horsemen crossed into Dai Viet. 15,000 fell and never rose again. Half the army that once conquered half the world was buried on this land. In the winter of 1258, Uriyangkhadai was wounded. 100,000 soldiers of Dai Viet stood their ground. They bled but did not break. The king was safe. The nation endured. By February that year, the Mongol army withdrew beyond the border, and history would remember Dai Viet, the first nation in Southeast Asia to defeat the Mongol Empire. In the 13th century, the world trembled beneath the charge of Mongol hooves. From the vast northern steppes, the Mongol Empire rose like a storm, unstoppable, unforgiving, unmatched. They swept across continents, conquering China, crushing Persia, and shaking the very gates of Europe. Wherever they marched, cities burned, kingdoms crumbled, and history was rewritten in blood. At its peak, this was the largest land empire the world had ever known. But when their shadow reached south, toward a small land called Dai Viet, they believed it would be just another easy conquest. They were wrong. This was no ordinary land. It was a nation forged in fire, where the spirit of the people burned brighter than fear. Dai Viet stood, not with overwhelming numbers or weapons, but with unbreakable courage. And there, in the heart of Southeast Asia, the Mongol Empire met something it had never known before: defeat. In 1258, war flames scorched the southern skies. The thunder of hooves echoed across the land. It was the Mongol Empire, the most powerful military force on earth, charging south toward Dai Viet. They weren't just invading a small kingdom. They aimed to turn this land into a launching pad to conquer the southern Song and devour all of China. The spark, 1257. In 1257, the infamous Mongol general Uriyangkhadai got Long Haptai, who had crushed entire regions of China, sent envoys to the Tran dynasty with a message: "Let us pass through your land to strike the southern Song." The plan was clear. To swallow China, they had to trample Dai Viet first. But the Tran court saw through the lie. King Trần Thái Tông stood firm. He imprisoned the Mongol envoys, knowing that meant choosing war. The Mongols mobilized. When no word came back from his envoys, Uriyangkhadai flew into a rage. He immediately assembled an army of 50,000 troops, split into three wings. The vanguard, led by Triet Zhou, advanced along the Thao River toward Binh La Marche. The second wing, under his son Achuan, followed to provide reinforcements. Uriyangkhadai himself commanded the rear, directing the full offensive. Bold response upon hearing the news, King Trần Thái Tông gathered his generals and made a bold decision. "We will not hide behind walls. We will draw them in and strike head-on." The strategy was clear. Let the enemy come deep, then crush them in a decisive battle at Binh La Nguyen. Grand military had around 100,000 troops, but only 20,000 royal guards near the capital were immediately battle-ready. They quickly summoned 40,000 local troops, totaling 60,000 soldiers, along with war elephants, horses, and river fleets rushing toward Binh La. King Trần Thái Tông took personal command, leading 6 elite royal divisions: Thien Thuoc, Thien Chuang, Thanh Duc, Chuang Thanh, Thanh Sac, Kung Thanh, reinforced by veteran troops from the capital. Across the wide plains of Binh La, a deadly battlefield took shape. The flames were rising. Dai Viet was ready to face the most feared army in human history. Battle of Binh La Nguyen, sea of fire in the field. When Long Haptai crossed the river, Dai Viet forces assembled at Binh Nguyen. The winter plains, cold and dry, now turned into a sea of fire. The sky burned red. The earth cracked beneath hooves. The battle began before the sun reached its peak. Tran cavalry charged, slashing through enemy lines. But the Mongol horsemen, veterans of countless wars, fought as they encircled, retreated as they fired. Every arrow struck its mark. The Tran army fought with all their will, but the battlefield shattered, piece by piece. Flags fell, blades broke, men dropped. Black smoke covered the sky. The wind howled. War drums drowned in the thunder of hooves. Then the signal horn called the retreat. No one thought of glory anymore. There was only one mission left: protect the king. Binh Nguyen was a defeat, but not a defeat of spirit. It was the first fall of a nation learning to rise beneath the thunder of history's most fearsome cavalry. A masterful battle of wits between the fierce Trần Thái Tông of Dai Viet and the famed Mongol general Uriyangkhadai. On one side the man who forged the Tran dynasty from chaos. On the other, a seasoned commander of the mightiest empire the world had ever seen. When Uriyangkhadai entered Thonglong, he was stunned. The capital was nothing but an empty shell. Only those who lived it truly understand. No victory ever comes easily, because every victory is a trade, and always sacrifice follows. The scorched earth strategy was a perilous move. The Tran court would never have chosen it if they had any other way, because this was a double-edged sword. Picture it. To make this plan work, our army had to evacuate entire towns in mere days, then burn everything they left behind. Homes, food, supplies, all turned to ash. Villages near Thonglong and Tien Truong reduced to cinders. When the Tran chose this path, it meant they were all in, a life-and-death gamble. But the Tran heroes, once they chose to act, they committed. No hesitation, no turning back. The king ordered bridges destroyed, traps laid, raids launched to slow the enemy's advance. It was a race against time. And when the Mongols entered the capital, just in time, our forces had slipped away. Uriyangkhadai stood stunned. Not just the royal court, not just the army, but the entire population was gone. An empty capital, no people, no food. A blow struck straight at the mind. The Mongols ransacked Thonglong, searched every alley, every house, but found no one and found nothing. Uriyangkhadai knew he'd walked into a trap, but the worst part, this was no hidden ambush. It was an open trap, a bait laid in plain sight. Sensing danger, the general pulled out of the capital. He set up camp east of the Red River, reorganized, tended to the troops, waited, a move worthy of a seasoned commander. At Dong Bo Dao, he raised thousands of tents. Soldiers kept strict formation, weapons always at hand, 3 layers of watch, guard posts at every approach, cavalry, scouts, circling Thonglong, day and night. They searched for the Dai Viet army, for food, for tracks, for any sign, but everything was already within the Tran's design. 3 days after Thoat Hoan seized Thonglong, the winter wind swept across the cold river plain outside the capital. But in that silent night, hundreds of Dai Viet warships gathered in the mist. Moonlight glimmered on iron helmets. No drums, no shouts, only the breath of thousands waiting for the signal. On the lead ship, Tran Hung Jiao stood still, watching the faint glow of fire from the city afar. When the wind shifted, the signal was passed, by torchlight, not by horn. From the northern to the southern bank, tiny sparks linked together into a line of red fire along the river. It was the sign to begin. From upstream, Tran Quang Kai led the vanguard fleet. From downstream, Tran Khan Du sealed the escape. The jaws had closed, At the center, Tran Hung Jiao commanded the main force to strike directly at the enemy ships anchored at Zhongbo Jiao. At the third watch of the night, as the tide rose, a single war drum thundered, tearing through the darkness. Hundreds of Dai Viet ships surged forward like a storm. Flames burst from their prows. Spears flashed beneath the moonlight, and the war cry "Sat that" echoed across the Red River. The Mongols panicked. Caught off guard, they tried to form ranks, but too late. Their bows not yet drawn, flames had already climbed up their hulls. Fire roared, water churned, the wind screamed, and the shouts of Dai Viet warriors drowned the enemy drums. The river turned into a sea of fire. Tran Quang Kai attacked from upstream, cutting off any retreat. From downstream, Tran Khan Du struck hard, cutting the enemy's rear and driving straight into their line. And in the middle, Tran Hung Jiao drove the main assault, pressing the enemy into chaos. Three waves of fire converged, forming a blazing pincer. Mongol ships shattered one by one. Men sank into the freezing river, their armor swallowed by smoke and ash. The victorious cry thundered through the dawn sky. But the fire on the river had not yet died. Smoke and embers drifted inland, and the plains of Thunglong glowed red beneath the morning mist. As the Tran Navy blocked every escape on water, on land, the Dai Viet infantry prepared their second strike. Hidden among the reeds and fields, thousands of archers drew their bows in unison. Then it came. Just before dawn, a sudden rain of arrows poured down on the Mongol encampment. The Mongol encampment burned from the center. Flames spread outward, consuming everything in their path. Steel clashed, battle cries rose, and the Tran war cry shook the earth. The lines were breached. The formation collapsed. Ngatlong Hoptai tried to rally the troops, but his commanders, cut off, orders lost, signals chaotic. Their counterattack crumbled before it could begin. The Mongols fled toward the river, but their retreat was blocked. Dai Viet cavalry had sealed the path. The battlefield became a living quake. Men fell, horses shrieked, spears lit the mist of morning. Leitan led the pursuit from the south, driving the final strike into the Mongol rear. Ngatlong Hoptai was wounded, in front, a tightening noose, behind the churning Nai River. With no way out, he leapt into the river and swam upstream to escape. The Dai Viet counteroffensive ended in total victory. Mongol armies shattered, commanders fell, the land held, and Thang Long rose from the ashes.